fantastic. Another Fantastic Four movie. Oh man. It had to go there somewhere. Well, here I am making another late vlog for my own reasons. I should stop repeating that. And you know what? People get used to it. Movie tickets are getting expensive, and so I might as well do all these discount movie experiences. Oh, and by the way, it's too hot outside. Seriously. Before I went to go to the movies, I had to wear something adequate for kind of like a reunion of sorts. And then I got hit by probably very early summer, and and people told me that it's kind of like 100 degrees outside, so it's really hot. So this is why I had to crank up my AC. The air conditioner is still on, by the way. I turn it on right now. So I don't want to pass out on the floor while I'm making these vlogs, especially since they usually when I get nervous or anxious or when I talk about it, sometimes the blood pressure kind of goes up, and in the heat it's not a good idea. So bear that this vlog is gonna have the air conditioner, which I usually don't turn it on, mostly because I get a little bit stingy about conserving energy. Something about ecological thing that got stuck in my head and kind of became kind of like a bad habit of mine. But unfortunately, I know Saitama, like One Punch Man, who he barely raises the AC, and that makes him really kind of like the strongest person in the world. Okay, but this is not a vlog about global warming or anything like that. This is going to be talking about the latest Marvel movie, which is none other than Fantastic Four. This is kind of like the fourth attempt to bring the Fantastic Four on the big screen, but this time it is the Marvel Cinematic Universe trying to do that, and a lot of people were like kind of like a mixture between hope and despair, in the sense that the trailer basically it brought up people saying that, oh wow, finally we're gonna have a kind of like a good Fantastic Four, and well, it is time for me to speak about some of those experience. What is my stance between me and Fantastic Four? I did grew up watching the Hanna-Barbera cartoon and a little bit of the Fox Kids cartoon, but I remember that I wasn't, personally attached to like many people claim to say. People, and I get the dynamic, and I know some of the basics. The Fantastic Four. They really like the family dynamic, with Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm, Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, and the Thing. The funny thing about it is that I did watch a little bit of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I do remember that the Thing was kind of a little bit so popular that there was even kind of like a spin-off in which the Thing was alone, and Ben Grimm was basically this kid who had a ring, and he transported into the Rocky hero when he joins the ring, and he say ring thing, do your thing, or something like that. That was cheese. That was kind of like cheesy in a way. But that was actually my introduction to that, and then I remember that after that show, that when Fantastic Four, Hanna-Barbera cartoon appeared, and then the same character appeared, I was like, okay, which one is the big continuity? But that was me as a child. But still, again, that helped me out having a basic structural knowledge about what Fantastic Four is. The more a little bit more far away from that. Call me a newbie. This is something I have to say. But then comes, of course, the movies. I never saw the Roger Corman version, and people up to this day they kind of say it's kind of like the most superior, mostly on how people really have this reputation to not liking the other movies. Although I do respect Roger Corman, but I don't think that he was kind of like the best in the world. Some of his productions are kind of like interesting to watch. I saw this movie that is produced by the same company, Roger Corman. It was a movie called, it was kind of like an indie movie called Flying Ryan, and this movie was such an acid trip that it was insane. This Flying Ryan was so dumb, but it brings you a smile on your face because it was so hilariously dumb. But okay, I have, again, no experience with the Roger Corman version. Then came the 2000s version, the Tim Story version. I rewatched the first movie this year, and honestly, I can see that it didn't age well because some of the story pacing gets boring, and also, how can I say, some of the acting wasn't exactly very good. Yeah, God. Oh, and by the way, rest in peace, the guy who played Victor Von Doom. He passed away this year. But other than that, I thought that it was a decent Fantastic Four movie. I really like the family dynamic that they had, in which it was not perfect, but still I like that they kept the character, in character, both Rick Richards, Storm, Johnny, and Ben. Ben, of course, Michael Chiklis really nailed the character and nailed his acting. I think that the effect of the sing was actually really good. Jessica Alba, of course, was kind of boring, but I don't think that she was pretty much kind of like terrible actress. I think that maybe a little bit she could have been molded a little bit better, but I don't think that the first movie was decent, but for the sake of everyone, I could say that was a little bit below average. So it's not as bad as people think. Then came the sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and well, I don't have this immense hate boner like many people has it. I can see that why people don't like it, and I do remember that this was also one of the most disappointing experiences in my life, because it's mostly the second half in which it falters, because they keep building up Galactus, the giant god planet eater, but unfortunately they screw it up because they, instead of the giant being that many Marvel fans wanted to see, it was mostly a bad CGI cloud. And of course they had to shoehorn in Doctor Doom for almost no reason. So honestly, it was bad. It was pretty badly handled. But I will not gonna condemn it too much, because I will admit that this movie actually has one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos, in which it was kind of funny, in which he got negated the invitation of Reed. He was denied the invitation to a wedding. That was actually kind of hilarious. And then, of course, when Sony decided to try to compete with the Marvel Cinematic Universe that Disney bought, and they decided to go with the other Fantastic Four. I think I make a vlog out of it. I didn't do it. That was before I started doing vlogs. This with they failed on almost every single aspect. That is why it was nominated. It was, instead of calling it Fantastic Four, it's now known as Fantastic Four. That movie became kind of like an example of how to screw up an adaptation, because first of all, there was a total miscast, and no one would look the part. And people complain about the other one. That one had a lot of miscast. The acting was dead. I remember when I wrote on Facebook about how I reviewed this movie. The best way I can describe about a movie is just watching a corpse deteriorating. That movie was totally dead. It was so boring and so disjointed that nobody even cared for it, and it showed. Especially because I've been hearing rumors that this movie went through a lot of development hell. But okay, that basically killed off any opportunity to have some faith on Fantastic Four. And now we got this movie. This movie, the first steps, kind of broke some hope for all the diehard fans of Fantastic Four. But in my head, I was actually like now every Marvel movie nowadays, I was kind of like cautious, just like I did with the Superman movie, in which I wasn't gonna hype it up or overhype it up. I always had my doubts, especially considering that Marvel wasn't exactly on the right track because of some of the internal and social aspects that they were shoehorning in, and a lot of the things that it didn't go well. And of course, la-di-da, the publicity stunts that a lot of people were talking didn't exactly felt that it was that it was going to be kind of like a good movie. There was this sense of dread that it kind of felt intrusive, and that kind of made me kind of have my doubts if it's going to be a good movie or it's going to be something like that. Because honestly, a lot of people, they're always saying that, oh, Thunderbolt was good and all this stuff, but I am on the contrary, that Thunderbolt was not good. It has some decent stuff, but it's not. The more I think about it, Thunderbolt was never good. But people were still hopeful for that. And by the way, to anyone, if you can hear me and you make thumbnails on, if you like a Marvel movie, okay, good for you. But please stop saying Marvel is back. It's being used a lot of times, and it gets annoying. Marvel is never back because it's still here, so it never went away. But you know what? Despite the bad publicity stunts, and of course Pedro Pascal opening his mouth, and some, let's say, odd hair-raising creative liberties that that kind of I will say that they brought on themselves more than anything. It's not more kind of like expectation, but it's more like, sorry about that, I just wanted to readjust. It was more kind of like the publicity stunts kind of brought from themselves some of the criticism that this movie had. This is where I was kind of like a little bit cautious, but not in the way that I was kind of like miserable. I'm always kind of like cautious. And then and the day finally came. I had to endure the heat because I had to go somewhere else, and luckily it was near the movie theater. And I finally watched it. Packed house, by the way. It was a packed house in a small movie theater. And here is my honest thoughts about Fantastic Four: The First Steps. Was it fantastic? No, not exactly. Was it terrible? No, it wasn't. Was it good at least? Yes! Yes! It was actually kind of good. It was actually good. It may not have kind of reached the Deadpool Wolverine kind of level, but I am happy to say that it did at least made a decent Fantastic Four movie. I I did like some of the stuff that I had. Not everything, I would say. And just in case, I'm gonna try to leave aside, all the publicity blunders that they do. This is why you must. This is why for movies you must almost never. You must not reveal too much or not say too much. You just have some face on the movie, and then people will say what they want. But but this movie, it has some of the enjoyment aspect that I gotta say that it was similar to Superman in the sense of how it made me feel, which is kind of like a coincidence because I saw it while I was surfing on the internet. Sorry, Spencer. I I saw kind of like a thumbnail in which people are saying that both Superman and the Fantastic Four movie are kind of similar in a way. In a way, I can see that. I can see why, in which both are enjoyable. And right now in my head, I kind of want to balance which movie was the better deal. And at first, I was thinking that maybe it was Superman, but then the more I trying to lean a little bit on the Fantastic Four one because at least Superman Superman had his problems that he wanted to make it a little bit too close to reality in some areas. Although that didn't bother me. Although, of course, no one is a fan about the ending or some of the choices. But the more I think about it, Fantastic Four have a kind of like a more structure. It has a little bit kind of like a more fresh idea into it, a little bit, not exactly. But here I am, kind of still debating myself which one it is. Oh, and a family member did watch Superman yesterday, and it liked it. So, okay, let's go a little bit talk about Fantastic Four, the first step to, probably trying to, the first step to probably trying to put Marvel in the market. But you know what? If you ask me personally, the first step that you should have done in order to rescue Marvel is getting rid of Miss Marvel. Sorry, I still feel annoyed of Miss Marvel. And that should have been the good first step, getting rid of Miss Marvel. She's basically the Scrappy Doo of the Marvel Universe. Okay, Fantastic Four, the first step. I mean, this is kind of like, it's a Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they decided to take place on the 60s. Because I think it's because the 60s is where originally take place. Although it's more kind of like semi-futuristic 60s with the what the 60s seem that there's where technology is, and the Fantastic Four are already the renowned superheroes, and that's actually happened in the comics. And that the Fantastic Four, unlike Spider-Man or sometimes Tony Stark or sometimes Steve Rogers, or kind of like 50% of the heroes, they keep their identity secret. The Fantastic Four were always the kind of heroes that they were more in the open. Uh, and they deal with the popularity, but also they're humble. They act like a family. We got Reed Richards as Mr. Fantastic. This time played by Pedro Pascal, Sue Storm, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Ebba Moss Batra as Ben Grimm. They're already settled, and oh yeah, also they have their 60s robot. What was it? Herbie, played by Matthew Wood, which I think they should have considered a name. I don't know why they had to add the robot. The robot kind of breaks the the illusion that they're Fantastic Four. They're actually gonna be they're Fantastic Five. I don't know much about Herbie, but I do tend to believe that one of the animated series, because of some copyright issue or something like that, they had to eliminate Johnny Storm and they add the robot. That's as far as I can remember. I didn't research most about it. If I'm wrong, let me know. I'm open to learn about my mistakes. So basically, they're now superheroes. They're even popular enough to even have their their animated shows and all this stuff. And well, then of course Sue is pregnant. She's gonna have the baby, which I know that this is kind of like part of the comics and all this stuff. And then, out of the blue, the Silver Surfer, in which they gender swapped this character to be played by Julia Garner, she comes out of nowhere and informs that this being named Galactus is gonna come and devour the planet. So everyone should cherish their last moments. It's basically the thing of Doomsday. So when the Fantastic Four, they made their interplanetary travel to try to negotiate with Galactus. Galactus gives them one choice: either let him consume the planet because he has to eat, and there's kind of more to that, but he will spare the planet if they give him the baby. At that point, the baby was unborn. But the point is that the baby apparently has some cosmic powers inside of him because, he is the love child between two people who have their power to this. What was it called? Some cosmic radiation. That's the best way I can put up. Because the Fantastic Four got their power because while space traveling, they get exposed to a cosmic storm, and that alternates their DNA molecule and gave them their different powers. And of course, that as parents, they don't want to give up the baby. So then the whole movie is about them preparing to battle against this giant being. That's pretty much, I will say, without spoiling too much. And I will say that during the course of the movie, one of the things that I actually really like about the movie is the sense of dread of this impending doom that is happening. It kind of comes like even in a moment in which people become irrational, but then you need kind of like this talk in which, what would you do if you kind of are cornered into giving up in order to giving up your precious thing in order to save everyone? It's kind of like this punch in your face about the collective needs, but at the same time, you'll want to find a way to save both. Because if you can see, this is not exactly kind of like a situation where you can have the cake and eat it at the same time. No, this wasn't kind of like that situation. But 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 yeah, they keep this kind of like the '60s, the preparation, but this whole impending doom kind of thing. This is kind of like the part that really gets me, and having the character, having with those dilemmas, the way the people trying to get together, trying to find a solution, even though it's on the face of some godly thing, and that tension is what hooked me into the movie more than kind of like anything else. Acting wise, I will say that they do have their. They do have that. They did well. I don't think they were kind of like very too strong, but I think there's a little bit more of a wild take could have been done. But honestly, I'm struggling a little bit to describe it because I think they were fine. Let's talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room because Pedro Pascal has kind of became a very controversial guy. He's kind of became the Chris Pratt of the movie world. And personally, I don't dislike the guy. Although he does tend to open his mouth and say some stuff that kind of make you raise your eyebrows. Although I cannot deny that he is a good actor, and he did play Reed Richards well as the calculating man. That sometimes he's calculating. I don't think that Reed Richards is as smart as Tony Stark, and even less. He's less charismatic as Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. in that thing. But you can tell that he's a good father and all this stuff. There is only one thing that I don't like about Pedro Pascal portrayal of Reed Richards, and that is that mustache. I'm sorry, but I don't like that mustache. That mustache makes him look like an adult movie star. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but people, Hollywood, you hear me out. The day you make the new Fantastic Four, tell Pedro Pascal to shave that mustache. That mustache has to go. It's so distracting. Sue Storm, Vanessa Quinn, she was also fine. Her acting was better than Jessica Alba, and of course the one that I forget from the Fantastic Four. They gave her a little bit more to do that. Although this is where people kind of got worried about the direction of the movie, considering its past things. But thankfully, it didn't go that far. Like I said, the publicity and the articles of this movie really kind of harmed the team with this movie. I did also like Joseph Quinn and Johnny Storm. Although he did a good job. And honestly, I really like the character in itself because the Human Torch was always, the cocky, reckless, and let's say Casanova of the team because he's young, he's hip, but despite that, he kind of took, although I did like more the Chris Pine, portrayal because the Chris Pine portrayal, he is kind of like an asshole, but you can tell that despite being an asshole, he's still a good kid. He's good at heart. I will say that I really don't like it when they kill him off on Deadpool Wolverine. Not even as a joke, I will tell you. But here I will say that they keep him a little bit, good, and with that personality. I can notice that they kind of water him down a little bit. Not exactly, but honestly, I will have liked him to be, still a little bit more kind of like this jerk ass with a heart of gold. Although third game, at least they make him a little bit more likable in this one, because in the sense that now that his sister got a baby, now he acts a little bit more mature. So I can give a pass on that. And Ben Grimm as the Thing. He does really good, and I like the effects that they gave him. Even though I like more, the Michael Chiklis arc in which he starts out, that he has to be adjust with being a rock, and he's kind of like gruff because, well, his life became a little bit more complicated, let's say. And to the credit of the Tim Story version, Tim Story version actually was a little bit more spot on the difficulties of living as a rock man in this normal society. Although in this case they show more kind of like little by little. Although I gotta admit that I don't like that they don't model the voice, because his voice sounding a little bit normal, it kind of takes off a little bit, kind of like the charm. I don't know, there was something kind of like charming, oh, they sound like this, or kind of like just rough and tough, because it gives him a little bit more personality. But instead, when you see him, talk like normal, it kind of sounds like they want to get closer to the Taika Waititi kind of character that is also kind of like a rock band. I forget the name of the guy, but he's a guy that looks like Jesus or something like that. The Taika Waititi guy, the guy. Yeah. And although I don't know why they wanted to make him, I really like, when he go with the catchphrase, it's clobbering time. But in this one, he kind of feels reluctant to it until he was forced into it, which is kind of cute. But honestly, I kind of prefer when he embraces it, because that's kind of like the charm of it. Of course, there's the baby. I cannot describe the baby's acting because a baby cannot act. There are times in which I can see the human baby, and then it's kind of like a CGI. There is one problem, but I will get into it that kind of like later. Julia Garner, she plays the Silver Surfer. Of course, that is gender swap. Although this is where this is where kind of like the direction of the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of harmed that character with that decision, because people will kind of, it wouldn't be so bad if it wouldn't having this accusation that I don't want to go too deep into it, because I don't want to be the type of asshole that goes into it, that get complained coming into it or something like that. I don't want to be like kind of like that guy. But this one is kind of got me the biggest worries. Thankfully, it didn't go like that, but I can't help that the reason they made the gender swap is so that Johnny Storm will come up with some jokes that they kind of go into it. Maybe it's that, but you. If I'm wrong, you're kind of free to punch me in the face if it is. But now, but still acting wise, at the role as the Silver Surfer, she did good. I'll say, at least I'll give it credit that it was more faithful to the comic counterpart. That I appreciate. Because honestly, when they made these kind of decisions, things can get worse. Taskmaster. So I like what they did. The big man himself, Galactus, it's played by Ralph Ineson. This was the Galactus we wanted to watch on a big screen, not this cloud, the digital cloud like they did on Rise of Silver Surfer. I don't know who was the boneheaded to make that decision. But now you have budget, now you have no excuses, and they nailed it. The Galactus nailed at this big, threatening presence. And Galactus was always one of the pinnacles of threats in the Marvel Universe. You know, this galactic god, he's really powerful, he's gigantic, and his sole purpose in life, in order to survive, is to go to other planets and feed off their life force. It is, and thanks to him, this is where make the movie feel like there's this imminent threat. That's pretty much I have to say about him. Okay, there were other characters here and there. Oh yeah, there's also Matthew Wood. He plays the Herbie the robot. Herbie was kind of like cute, I'll say, kind of like this 60s style robot that is kind of like a big tape recorder. Maybe he was just there just to add some marketability on it. Although the funny thing is how in your face the market, how 60s market it looks like. You know how the lunchbox and all this stuff. You know what? I kind of miss those days. When you revisit the 60s commercials, it was kind of like more innocent and cute. There are some other characters. There was kind of like the Subterranean. There was this big fat guy. He's the only character that I didn't like at all because I think that it was kind of like this comedian that they got, and he, for some reason, I thought he was Galifianakis, but he wasn't. But he acted like one. But man, that they really trying to crank up his humor, I'll say. Thankfully, he isn't too much into the movie. But the funny thing is that when they talk about mole people, the Subterraneans, the final scene of The Incredibles came to my head. Maybe that was an homage to that. Alright, okay, the special effects, it's fine. I like some of the practicality that they did, not abuse of special effects. It's fine. It's fine, I'll say. Even the look, you can notice some of the saturation to make it look a little bit like the 60s. I had to get used to the costume. I even have to get used a little bit of the thing not being, how can I say, being kind of undressed except with his pants. Because that memory stuck into me, but thankfully someone did help me out and saying that no, it's not all the time that he's on his undies. So I had to get used of the costume, but still the 60s aesthetic, I like it fine. I did really like also the themes, I'll say. The music is fine. Although, man, that they really feel proud of having this base Sovietization of Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four. Thanks. I will always remember. And now every time I'm gonna listen to the Fifth Symphony of Beethoven, I'm gonna remember the Fantastic Four. I don't know if this is artistic hijacking. Alright. Thematically, I can see some of the family dynamic in which you cannot sacrifice, and everyone can they can do their part, and to not let yourself succumb to godly power. You're showing your love to the baby that came out. You become a father, and I like the dynamic between the family between Reed Richards, Sue Storm. Although there were some times in which I do agree that Sue Storm kind of acted a little bit too rash in some occasions, but I get it. It gave kind of like some meaning on that. Although I hear it now, it's time for me to not overhype this movie, and there are some things that I do have to complain. for example, again, the change to Silver Surfer I already covered, so this one's out of the play. Some of the things that I do not appreciate, for example, is I will say that maybe let me try to put things into perspective. Is that I didn't get caught into the movie on probably the first 35 or 40 minutes because the thing that bothered me the most of this movie is the whole thing about Sue Storm acting like a hero while she was pregnant. Movies nowadays are trying a little bit too hard on bringing pregnant women doing superhero stuff, in which in the surface it looks heroic, it looks cool and all this stuff, but they also have to consider some limitations of the body and how it affects, in which it kind of raised my eyebrows, having Sue Storm going to space while pregnant in her 9th month of pregnancy on a rocket. On a rocket. Doesn't that cause kind of like strain on the on the body? I mean, I'm not an expert, but that could harm kind of like the baby in a way. So that concerns me. And then of course they escape from Galactus, and during the whole chase scene, she finally goes into labor. And I thought it was, okay, genius, why didn't you stay? I mean, if you care for the baby, then you should have stayed on Earth. You should have stayed on Earth and, well, do what a responsible mother should do. Bring the baby to life. But now, because for cool attention, you had to go to space. And, of course, she gave birth. And apparently, the baby comes up without any goo or blood, or I'm kind of nitpicking how pregnancy works. They don't. I know that they don't want it to gross out, because I know that there's a younger audience who really wants to know. But honestly, Marvel can go either one way or another. So this is kind of a little bit of a nitpick that I have with this movie about how they handle the pregnancy of Sue Storm. Okay, some other nitpicks that I could go in it. I was saying that there are some jokes that it kind of falls a little bit flat, and not too flat. Although I will give it credit that the movie doesn't try the cringy humor or the out of place humor like they kind of tried in many ways. This one actually worked out a little bit well paced in one way or another. That's another kind of like a negative I will say from this movie. The similarity is that the movie feels like the Superman movie. It's more coincidental now that I think. Now that I think about it, and other than that, I think that the movie itself really really worked well for what it is. Oh, now that I think about it, I think there's something that kind of mystifies me a little bit. Is that if this whole event happened on the cinematic universe on the 60s, I wonder why in the modern era of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in continuity, no one is talking about that. Wouldn't have that during that time, let's say, like for example, how can I say it? Winter Soldier. If Winter Soldier is like it's like, hey, do you know that this thing happened in the 60s? now that I think about it, they ever since that crappy movie called The Eternals, and of course that latest Captain America movie, they were bringing this celestial being that is on the scene. So if they're talking about celestial beings or something like that, wouldn't they go to to somewhere and they'll say, hey, this kind of looks familiar. When you're talking about celestial beings, the closest we can think is about this giant guy that landed on New York, and then we have these group of superheroes known as the Fantastic Four, and they technically had to try to stop him. Couldn't that have some some memory into the future? But that's just nitpick. It's just probably it's not that important. But okay, Fantastic Four, the first steps. Was it good? Yes, I did enjoy it. I had a good time. I wouldn't say that it was kind of like fantastic, but maybe we could find it. This is kind of like a good first step to Marvel Redemption. But again, I am kind of like cautionary. And yes, this movie has, of course, the mid-credit scenes in which it teases the next plot. In this case, it plot the next Avengers Doomsday. And of course, the final post-credit scene in which nowadays when the final post-credit scene, it's always kind of like a joke. The final post-credit scene is always considered a jokey one. But either way, yep. I don't know what to say more. Fantastic Four. This time, it wasn't a Fantastic Four. I thought about it. I might say that it kind of went fantastically well. Well, not too fantastic. Good enough.